Hi everybody, I'm Luke from the Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, please remember you can thumb up the video, you can subscribe to the channel, or even the Patreon if you want to help me out with review copies and better equipment. But mainly, get your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you think about Sobek and any other games that I review on the channel. Let me know, brief up the engagement, that's what I like to see. We'll get on with the video in just a second, but first, a quick word from the sponsor. As a fellow gamer, you'll understand this is unacceptable. The solution? Head down to my new sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk. KIENDA stocks many of the hot new releases as well as some old hidden gems. Free delivery on orders over £30, further discounts on bulk purchases, and even 5% of your spending refunded back to you as points to be used for further discounts down the line. If you use the referral link in the description below and sign up for a new account, you'll get 5% discount on your first order over £60. So let's make gaps in your collection a thing of the past. Get down to KIENDA and start saving today. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the video.
Get on with it.
And as I mentioned on my last video, a quick shout out to my friend debra.wallace who creates lovely little fluffy toys like this, my little fizz cake here, it's so fluffy! But also little ones like my tiny little Yoda mascot and other things that you may or may not have seen in some of my videos. Check out her email address in the description below, drop her a line and see if there's anything that you'd like her to make you. So today we're looking at Sobek. This is a reprint of an older game which I believe was actually catering for up to 4 players. Now this is Sobek 2 players. Forget the tagline, it's just basically Sobek except now it's only a 2-player game. And in preparation for some top 10 lists for 2-player games that I'm doing, I needed to get a few more 2-player games played, and so KIENDA have kindly supplied me with a few of these games, this one included, to check out. But Sobek has got my interest mainly for one thing. Bruno Cafala. Yeah, Bruno Cafala is definitely one of my top designers, so whenever he designs a game I'm definitely interested in giving it another look, especially when it comes to 2-player games, because if you think of something like 7 Wonders Duel and the like, he's got a bit of a knack for it. I mean, the fact that he's doing Splendor Duel, which I don't desperately think it needs a dual version, but the fact that his name's on the box means I'm definitely going to give it a look-see. But this Sobek here is essentially a set collection trading game. So both of you will be manipulating these tiles on this grid here. I haven't set them all up, but basically it will be a, a 6x6 grid of tiles. And there are a mix of goods with scarab symbols and various different types, but also some characters with special abilities. Now, what you are essentially doing is you're doing one of 3 actions. You can take a tile from the market and add it to your hand. You can sell a set of goods. So much like in games like, say, Jaipur, for example, if you collect a set of at least 3 goods, let's say, for argument's sake, let's take a couple off the board. Let's say I've got, here we go, 3 corn. I've got 3 corn. I can sell those 3 corn, and they go in a set in front of me, and at the end of the game they'll score me points based on how many tiles are in the set, multiplied by how many scarabs are on the various tiles. So it's not just a case of have a ton of a single good, you also want to have some scarabs in there in order to make the multiplier bigger. But you can also play a character from your hand for its special ability, of which it does various things, like all character abilities do. But the little twist here is this Ankh pawn. So the Ankh pawn starts in the middle based on the player who takes it, but then this dictates where the opponent can take a tile from if they choose to take from the market. So at the moment it's pointing to the outwards here. So if I decide I want to take, say, let's take this fish over here. Well, it's pointing diagonal with the notches. So now I've got to twist the Ankh pawn diagonal, which means I can only take a tile from this diagonal line. And then if I decide, right, I'm going to take this one, the Ankh pawn then orientates straight ahead and down, and now the opponent can only take from this line. So as well as grabbing the tiles you want, there's also the positional aspect of going, well, hang on, if I move it there, that means it's going to twist this way, which means the opponent has access to those. Do I want that? Or is that good because I know the opponent doesn't want any of those tiles? But there's another catch. It's alright saying, oh well, the Ankh pawn is pointing here, I've got the entire line to go through. Yeah, there's a catch though. If you take a tile that is miles down the line, like furthest one down, and there's tiles in between, when you take said tile, all the tiles in between go face down on your corruption board, which is essentially a little thing that every player has, and this corruption influences the end game scoring factor. So players take it in turns to play a character for an ability, take more tiles, the market replenishes by special rules, and as soon as somebody cannot take a turn, like Bus, there's no valid tile to take in the market, I've got no characters, I've got nothing to sell, I'm done. game ends and you essentially total up the points for the sets you've got. But in addition, there are a few other ways of getting points. Every time you sell a set, you can get these prorogue tokens, I think that's how you pronounce it, which can grant you some points or a special ability you can use as a one-off. But also, some of the tiles have a discard effect for a Deben token, basically gold. And so you've got a really cool bag here, you know, an embroidered bag. And so these coin tokens are in the bag to start with, and every time you discard a tile for its effect, there you go, grab a coin token, and it's basically anywhere from like 3 to 9 points. And then at the very end, with this corruption tile, whoever has the least amount of corruption with the 2 players gets a free coin out of this bag, plus 1 for every 3 tiles of corruption they have less than their opponent. So there's an incentive, like a little tug of war, where both players are trying to be slightly more corrupt than the other and not go too far.
I am evil Homer! I am evil Homer!
That point token could sway the balance at the end. It has done so, depending on how the rest of the game goes. So that's an overview of how the game plays, but is it any good? Well, first off, let's take a look at the components. Pretty good quality, actually, for a game that's not expensive. I mean, this will cost you around the 20 quid mark to grab, and you get a big fold-out board. You get a lot of decent quality tiles. You've got very nice sort of cartoony-ish artwork on it, but it's nice and colourful, easy to read. The graphic design is not difficult. You've got an embroidered bag, as I mentioned, with chunky, well, not chunky, but, you know, large cardboard tokens, and you've even got some reference aids. So the characters that I mentioned are all on one side of a reference aid, so are all the prorogue tokens, the distribution of all the coins and the tiles, if you really want to get to, you know, heavy duty with this game, are on one side. And then once you're done with the game, one side has the score track that you simply just flip over when necessary and calculate your score at the end, because there's no score technically done during the game. You've got a decent amount of component quality in this box for the price you're paying. Even the Ankh token is, you know, a big wooden golden piece, which is really cool and, you know, kind of sets the scene on the board. So you're getting a decent amount for your money. Now, in terms of learning the game, the rulebook is pretty decent, actually. I didn't have any trouble, like, getting to grips with it after my first game. That was the kind of deal, because we pretty much learnt this from scratch without knowing anything about the rules, read it from the book, and we got 1 or 2 rules wrong, but after the first game, we were confident, oh yeah, we can do this now and I could teach it fine, and then suddenly we didn't really need the rule book. But yeah, it'll probably take you 1 game just to get used to a few odds and ends, but other than that, it's not particularly complicated. If anything, the most annoying rule you got to remember is to grab one of these prorogue tokens when you sell a set. Always kept forgetting that. You have a bunch like in the notches on here at the side of the board, and we kept forgetting that. We sold a set and it's like, oh, you forgot to take the pro token. Oh yeah, let me have a look now. It's a little annoying. I wish there was a little reminder somewhere to remind you of doing that, but you know, that's a small gripe and that's more on us rather than the rulebook.
Stupid! You're so stupid!
Other than that, the game is pretty simple. I would not call this a gateway game per se. I mean, it's not far off gateway level, but you know, you have got some tactical decisions to make with the Ankh pawn. You've then got to decide whether you're going to grab a set of free tiles and sell it there and then, or you're going to wait until you've got a bigger set, because you have to sell at least 3 for a set. Then you've got the different effects of the prorogue tokens, then you've got all the different characters. Yes, there's a reference aid that tells you what they do, but not all the effects are just like discard, get a coin, and that's it. There are a few other weird effects in there. So I would say this is a light game, but this is definitely not gateway game. I wouldn't use this as the first inkling to teach people. I think like Great Plains, like I had in the other review, I think that's best suited really. But let's say it's not a difficult game at all, and let's say you do have the reference aid. So it's not like you read the token and it's like, oh, wait a minute, I don't quite get how that works. Nah, you'll understand, or most people will understand once you've read these. It's just the fact that certainly for your first couple of games, you're going to grab a tile and then go, all right, what does that one do again? Ah, cool. Because as much as the rules for the characters and the prorogue tokens are fairly straightforward, the iconography is not particularly intuitive. You know, some of these characters, you look at the bottom of there, which tells you what it does in icon form, and I still to this day could not remember what half of these characters do. They don't really sort of remind you very well of what they do in terms of rules, so you frequently are going back to this reference aid. As such, I wish that there was one of these per player. The fact that I have to constantly keep, so hang on, oh, you've got a character now? Right, let me just give you this a sec. Right, can I have it back now, please? That's a little annoying. We could have just had maybe 2 copies of each of these, that would have been fine. I don't know, maybe I'll photocopy it and laminate a couple of copies. Maybe there's some on BGG, I'll find out. But that's a small little gripe. It just would have been a nice like extra afterthought, shall we say, just to make life a little bit easier. Now the time on the box says 20 minutes. That is optimistic. Very optimistic. I mean, if you are teaching this game to anybody, you're not going to be able to play this game in 20 minutes. But even if you know what you're doing, there's a reasonable amount you got to think about. There's a decent amount going on. That 20 minutes is only going to be if both players are really comfortable with the game and don't even have to check this on a regular basis. You're probably looking closer to half an hour, 45 minutes for your first game while you're learning the rules, and then you should be able to cut that down to 30 minutes. 30 minutes is still a good filler-length game though, and it's still not particularly long for a two-player game per se. If you are able to get it down to 20 minutes, then you're going pretty fast, but as I say, that's on you. I'd say 30 minutes is more accurate a timer. But I had a good time with this from a mechanical perspective. The idea of getting sets of tiles and selling them is kind of familiar to me from games like Jaipur, so that's nothing particularly new, but the fact that you have to sell a minimum of 3 does mean that you're kind of wondering, well, I could just sell 3 tiles now.
Well, we're supposed to haggle.
But then that means I've got to find another 3 before the end of the game in order to expand that set. Maybe I should have hold on to these and then like keep it going. The problem is there's a couple of characters in here who can mess around with your hand, and you might not want to hold on to things for far too long. Not to mention at some point you do need to get them sold, because if the game ends without you realizing it, it's like, I need to get some points, I need to get some points. And losing those at the end of the game, if you haven't, done anything, because it gets quite painful. Because any sets that you have in your hand at the end get trashed for no points, and then any tiles you've got left go in your corruption pile, which could be problematic. So you certainly want to be a little bit careful.
I am Evil Homer.
That endgame trigger can also, it's not the most climactic ending, but it's not like it creeps on you unawares. Usually by the time you've only got a few tiles left and you can see how much you've got in your hand and that, you can kind of gauge, alright, there's a likelihood the game is going to end in a few turns. But the other player might decide to take a tile that you weren't expecting, or do something, play a character tile rather than move this pawn. So the game end timer can sneak up on you when you're not necessarily aware. If they decide, you know what, I could grab another tile and let you grab a tile and you grab a tile, but you know what, I'm going to grab this tile. Boom. You can't sell it. You can't sell anything. You haven't got a character, and you can't take anything off this line. Game ends. Good. It can happen, and certainly even I've been, party to that. But I think the tactical decision with where you position this is good and engaging. I like the idea that it's simple to see on the map. Because, the board. Yes, there's a lot of tiles everywhere, but you've only got to be interested in which way it can potentially point. So you're only looking at so many of them at once. But if you're really getting into this game, you could forward plan a little bit. So you go, right, well, I'm going to take this tile and I'm going to orientate it that way, because I reckon you're going to take that tile, and if you do, that means it's now going to be pointing this way on my turn, which means I can grab this tile that I really like. But then there's that sort of temptation of, well, I know I really want that tile, it would help me, I mean, it's got 3 scarabs on it, it's ivory, it's what I want, but that means I've got to chuck away 3 tiles in the corruption pile? That's, I don't know. Is it worth it? I mean, I don't know.
Do it, do it, do it, do it.
Maybe a little corruption's not so bad. There you go. Oh well, fine. These 3, corruption pile. There's some characters that can limit your corruption pile, or maybe we can just find a way to make you more corrupt than me. It's just a cool little system that doesn't burn the brain, but it just adds cool little tactical choices. Positioning this, what tile you want, and how much corruption you're willing to take. I mean, I love corruption mechanics in games. This sort of thing just really... It's something I really love. Lords of Waterdeep, as much as I'm kind of burning out on that one, I do like how the corruption works in that. I love how corruption works in Cleopatra and the Society of Architects. The way that you take the cards and you get corruption, and whoever has the most at the end outright loses the game. That is such a cool rule. I mean, I wonder if they could have done that in this just to make it an auto lose, but I think maybe it's good that they just make it a token draw, because then it's not like the least corrupt person is automatically the winner. It doesn't necessarily work that way. In fact, the first game we played, I was the most corrupt. Didn't matter. I got far enough ahead in points that the coin token they drew wasn't enough to catch up. So it does, play into the game, but it's not like, oh, it's an absolute decider, like least corrupt will win flat out. For variety, there's not a huge amount of it here. I mean, the tiles are going to be the same every game. They're just going to come out at different times, which is going to influence, whether somebody goes for certain sets in each game. The characters will be in the game throughout, but again, when those characters come out makes a difference. The fact that they're face down on the board means that you are taking a turn out of your repertoire to actually get said character. You don't necessarily know what it is. But, you know, the Pro tokens, there's only going to be so many in the game. There's only 5 of these you use, so that's a little bit of variety. But other than that, most of the games will play out in a kind of similar way. If there's one aspect I'm a little bit negative on, it's the drawing of tokens from this bag here, the Deben tokens. Now, it's not usually too much of a problem that I've experienced, but it can be. This is a luck of the draw element which can be quite swingy. If you look at the distribution of the Deben tokens on here, it basically can go from 3 to 9, right? You've got 3 3s, couple of 4s, couple of 5s, couple of 6s, couple of 7s, an 8 and a 9. If I draw 3 Deben tokens and they're the 3s and the 4s, you draw one single 9 and you've pretty much made the last 2 or 3 tokens I've drawn kind of defunct with a lucky draw. So, and because they're face down, you don't know what the opponent's taken, so you don't know if all the high numbers are being taken yet, you've just basically taken a chance. And I figure that maybe the coin value could have been maybe a little bit of a smaller spread, so not 3 to 9, maybe something like 5 to 9, 3 to 7, that kind of thing. Just bring it down a little bit. But I've not had a situation where somebody's drawn a 9, 8 and a 7 by complete fluke, but it could happen, so you need to be slightly aware. But for me, Sobek's a good hit. I mean, I wouldn't imagine wanting to play this with 3 or 4 players. I think this board would just be pretty chaotic if you did. Now, I've not played the original, so I don't know if there's other rules tweaks. Somebody can, by all means, let us know in the comments what the original version was like. But this 2-player only version is solid. This is another hit for Bruno. I really enjoy it. I'm going to keep this. I might be able to teach some new players this, you know, like a gateway game, but I'll probably reserve it for, like, you know, the next step. But I just think it's, you know, it's one that I can now teach relatively quickly. People get set collection. The artwork is, you know, the component quality is good. I like the cutesy artwork, particularly with the cows, little moo cows. They're so cute. They kind of remind me of like the Beefalo and Don't Starve. Beefalo. Do some research if you don't know that game. But yeah, I think for like a 20 quid price tag, maybe slightly over, you're getting a really good amount of components, a decent production quality, and a really solid, fun, tactical 2-player game. So this is another hit. I'm giving this one an 8 out of 10. A solid 8 out of 10. Great game. Seal of endorsement. Definitely one to pick up. Maybe a little bit too like swingy at times with the token draw. There's certainly the odd rule that you can forget relatively easily, and I do wish that maybe there was a reference aid for everybody. I mean, you're going to be constantly checking this character sheet for like every now and again because it's not the most intuitive of iconography. But those little small blemishes aside, don't detract that this is another solid 2-player game that if this is your wheelhouse and you want to get 2-player games littered all over your shelf, then you'd be mad to pass this one by. That's it for me. I'll see you on the next episode of the Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, please remember you can thumb up the video, you can subscribe to the channel or the Patreon if you want to give me a hand. But mostly, get your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what you think of this game. What was the old Sobek like? Any other Bruno Cathala 2-player games that you absolutely adore? Seven Wonders Duel is another. Are you looking forward to Splendor Duel? You know, any thoughts you've got, put them in the comments below. Until next time, you can check out my review of Great Plains, another 2-player game. The next one on the list will be Radlands. I'm sure many of you will be keen to hear my thoughts on that. But you can also check out my Top 100, which is going in full swing with more videos to come for sure. Take care, and remember as always, regardless if you're corrupt or not, it's still only a game. Bye for now.